Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are Holler Board Games. I'm Dave.
I'm Joanna.
And today we are going to be reviewing Sky Team from Scorpion Mask. Sky Team is a game where two players play as a pilot and a co-pilot to land an airplane through various conditions and airports all around the world.
Yep.
What we're going to do is we're going to cut away to a brief rules overview to give you some idea of how this is played. Then we're going to come back with our thoughts and opinions on it, what we like, what we dislike, and we're going to give it a score. If you guys already know how it plays, if you already know the rules and you want to skip over that part, there'll be timestamps in the video below, so you can just go and skip straight to our thoughts on it. But we're going to cut to that rules overview and then we'll be back. All right, we're going to do a brief rules overview of Sky Team before we get back to the review. So, what is Sky Team? Sky Team is a game where you are working, one player is working as a pilot and the other player is working as a co-pilot to land a plane together. And the way that we do this is the pilot rolls their dice and the co-pilot rolls their dice, and then we take turns alternating them, putting them in these spaces. The blue spaces can only be played by the pilot. The orange spaces can only be played by the co-pilot. The spaces that are blue and orange can be played by either the pilot or the co-pilot. Now, this track will tell you who goes first. So for example, this one is blue and it has an arrow pointing that way. So that would mean the pilot would take the first turn this go. So what do these spaces do? Let's explain that. 4 of these spaces, these 2 and these 2, are mandatory every time. That means all 4 of these spaces have to have a die in them by the end of the round or the plane crashes. The top 2 spaces up here are your axis. So if the pilot, for example, plays a 3 there and the co-pilot plays a 4 there, the plane will then tilt towards the higher number and it's not exactly level anymore. By the end of the round, when you're getting ready to land and these tracks have both moved down, it's mandatory for this to be level or the plane crashes. The 2 engine spaces down here determine your speed. So right now you can see there's a blue marker here and an orange marker here with numbers in between, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now if we play these die, if the co-pilot plays a 4, for example, and the pilot plays a 3, that's a 7, so we are right in between. So that would mean this space would move down by 1. If the co-pilot would have played a 6 here, for example, that would put us above this 8 on 9, and that would mean this track would move down by 2. If this track ever needs to move down and there is a plane in the window, you collide with that plane and you crash and you fail the whole mission. So below that, we have the brakes. These have to be applied in order by the pilot. So if the pilot puts a die in here, they can then activate that so that green light is showing and they can move the brakes up. At the end of the game, instead of being between the blue marker and the orange marker for your speed, you need your speed to be less than whatever the highest number of brakes you've applied is. So if you get your brakes all the way up to 6 at the end of the game, then you will need it to be less than 6. You're not required to do that in the base game, but it's very helpful if you get your the higher you get your brakes. So on either side here, on the left side, the pilot has the landing gear. The pilot can play a number in here that matches to lower the landing gear. Now every time the pilot lowers the landing gear, this blue marker moves up. That means that essentially the number that you need for your speed to either go slow or go fast or move down only 1 or the right speed, that's changing as the pilot activates the landing gear and as the co-pilot activates the flaps. Now the pilot doesn't have to do this in any specific order. He can play a 5 down here and unlock that and still move the marker up 1, whether or not the first 2 slots are filled. The co-pilot, on the other hand, has to use the flaps in order. So the co-pilot could play a 2 here and then turn that on, which would then move this marker up by 1. But if the green light for this wasn't on, he could not put a 3 in here because he has to play those in order. Along the bottom, we have blue or orange, and these are essentially if you don't have really anything else to do with the die, or you might need to adjust the die, you can play a die in here. and that will get you a coffee token. When you have a coffee token, you can spend it at any point before you place a die to change that die by plus or minus 1. So for example, you could take this 4 and turn it into a 5 before you place it here, or turn it into a 3 before you place it here. You cannot loop a 1 back down to a 6, and you cannot loop a 6 back down to back across to a 1. The spaces at the top are for your radio, and this is how you remove planes from this track over here. So for example, the Copilot could play a 6 on here, and you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you remove a plane out of this row. That's how you clear that so that you don't crash the plane into other planes whenever you're coming down. Now after the pilot and the Copilot have all placed out their dice at the end of the round, this track moves down automatically, and as indicated by this, during the next round, the Copilot will go first. Now, maybe the most important thing about this, and where a lot of the strategy of this comes in, is that the Copilot and the pilot, before they roll their die, can talk about what they're going to do and what they need to get done in the upcoming round, or what they think they need to do. But then when you roll your die, the pilot can't see the Copilot's die, and the Copilot can't see the pilot's die. I might have got that backwards. They can't see each other's die is the point, nor can you talk anymore about your strategy or anything else. So those die have to be placed in silent. Now you see up here you do have some reroll tokens. Whenever one of these comes into the window, you collect a reroll token, and you do have those, and they can be played at any time. You can place out 2 dice and then play the reroll token, and the pilot can reroll all of their die, the Copilot can reroll all of their die, the Copilot can reroll 1, the pilot can reroll 2, you can use those. So the reroll tokens do give you a bit of flexibility. Later on in this game, it starts to add a lot of different modules and a lot of different things to the game. It will add, for example, you can see here it will add a module that manages your fuel for the plane. And so it's blue or orange, so either the pilot or the Copilot can place a die in there, and the track moves down by what the number of the dice is. So if I put a 1 in there, the track will move from 20 down to 19. The kicker to that is that if you do not put a die in there, it moves down by 6 every time, so 20 to 14. So obviously you want to manage your fuel and put your lower dice in there to keep things from to keep your fuel from running out too fast. There are modules that add an in-turn to the bottom of the board that put in-turn tokens on here, and then you can play one of your die down here no matter what the number to get an in-turn token, and then you can play that in-turn token in whatever space you want to, as long as it's appropriate. And there are ice breaks, so eventually you get the ice breaks, and you can see here that the pilot and the Copilot both have to put a die in here, or the pilot can put 2, and those numbers have to match, and if they do, you advance the ice breaks forward. Unlike the regular breaks, the ice breaks have to go all the way up by the end. There are modules for things like wind speed, like you put out your wind speed and it changes which way the plane, how fast the plane goes. It can add, +3 or -3 or 2 or 1 to your engine die, so it slows you down or speeds you up here. And that is the basic idea of how SkyTeam is played, and how the modules that it adds on, and it gets to the point sometimes there are real-time modules where you only have, from the time you place a die, you have 60 seconds to place all of the die, and then if you don't place them, the die are just wasted. And you have different airports that you can land in. So some of your airports, as you can see, will have black die, and when you get to that spot, when you move it down, you roll the black die, and you would count up 1, 2, and you would add an airplane here, so you get more airplanes as you go along. Sometimes they have this, which dictates how the plane needs to be angled when that spot moves in, so that you don't crash, and if it's not angled a certain direction. Some of these you can see are much shorter than others, and so it changes up a lot with each airport, with each difficulty. There are cards that will tell you get to pick 1 or 2 of these cards, which give you certain special abilities. just a ton of variability here. And the game comes with your flight log, and the flight log explains to you as you go along each of the modules that it adds: kerosene, kerosene leak, ice brakes, wind, the intern, all of that. And in the back of this book, if I don't drop it everywhere, in the back of this book are all of your missions that you have, and they go from green in the front to all the way to black at the end, and those are in order of difficulty. And there are more of these. There is a QR code in here that you can scan. There are more of these online, and even some different components that that you can print out to give you more of these missions. So quite a bit of content in the base box. And now we will get back to the review. All right, we are back from the rules overview, and so now we're going to talk about what we like about it, what we don't like about it, some things we think other people might not like. So what do you like about this one?
So probably my favorite thing about this game is the way that it packs a lot of excitement in a really small package. Literally a small package, but also a small amount of time. So the gameplay on this is about 15 to 20 minutes, and so it's really easy for us to set up and knock out a game or two in an evening after dinner before we have to get the kid in bed and ready for school the next morning. But it doesn't sacrifice any amount of gameplay or excitement or that immersive feeling for that brevity. I really like the way that it forces you to collaborate with the partner that you're playing with, but also makes that collaboration really difficult and makes you have to think really creatively. That makes me happy.
Yeah, like we've said before, it's communication through sighs and grunts. Somebody plays that die and you're either like, or you're like, oh. And so you kind of know what the other person's going for. For me, the thing that I like about this one is that tension. It's that feeling of like, I'm trying to figure out what I have to do and what you're going to do at the same time. And I don't know, because when you do what I think you're going to do, it's like a big payoff. It's a super relieving feeling. I'm like, yes, okay, now I've got what I need for this. And then when you play the wrong thing, or not the wrong thing, but the thing that I don't think you're going to play, suddenly I have to readjust my whole strategy and look at all of my die and figure out what I'm going to do. And I like the way that feels. I also like how tight and close every single game feels. Like when you start out and you play those first couple of games, you're like, okay, well, we did that. Like, we barely survived that. And then they start adding the modules in with the fuel and the different airports and the plane direction and the intern. And
I heard the first time it gave us the intern, I was like, oh God, this intern is going to kill everybody.
And you're like, you never have a clue. You're like, okay, well, I don't know how we made it through the last one. How are we supposed to make it through this one? And then somehow you just always make it through. Those are my favorite things about it, is like just that feeling of like, okay, that tension and that lack of communication and that tightness, and how everything comes together to make that whole package just feel exactly like it's supposed to.
And it's really satisfying whenever you get to the last turn and you're like getting ready to land and you still have a couple dice for coffee.
Yeah, and everything's good to go.
Everything's good to go. You played this well. It's very satisfying. But it's also really satisfying whenever it comes down to like the last dice and like it was really close, but you managed to do it.
Yeah, I never feel unrewarded.
No,
I always feel like I always feel like I've played the game right.
We've done a really good job.
Yeah. I'll use that to segue into one of my dislikes. One of my dislikes in it is that there's still sometimes an element of randomness that you can't control. You have reroll tokens, you have your coffee to adjust up or down, but we've still lost a couple of times when I've been like, okay, well, that was clearly just like, bad
the
roll
luck of the draw.
dice. Yeah, when you roll 2 5s and 2 6s and you need to be low, and then you roll, you re-roll and then you re-roll 4 5s, and you're just like, okay, well, I can't control that. Like, there's just not much I can do here.
Bad.
So there is like some, but that's few and far between. Like, most of the time you can find a way to make it work, but those few and far between rolls are the ones that make me be like, okay, well, there's nothing I could have done there. But even then, that's not too bad.
No, like, it's not too bad, and that's not common. And I would say that we probably had that happen more often when we first started playing the game than we do now. I think we've kind of gotten some skills, and we've also kind of picked up some traits that we've figured out how the
Yeah.
other person plays, and we figured out like, oh, if this dice that I have to put in that slot really sucks for that slot, I need to play it early,
Yeah.
so that my partner has time to adjust.
Right.
So,
And even if it does come down to that, even if it does come down to like, oh, these are 2 terrible rolls right in a row, like it's 15 minutes. Like you
Yeah,
just redo it.
exactly.
It's not like you
Reset
wasted
it.
a whole Saturday and 4 hours, per game of your time to mess everything up and lose. No, it's like, oh, well, we'll just reset it and boom, you're
Go
back
again.
to playing in just a few minutes.
Yep.
For me, though, moving on to what I think other people
Uh-huh.
might not like, I think that tension might be something that other people might not
Yeah.
like, because there's a lot of times where like you're playing with the other person and you're like, just do the thing that I need you to do right now.
yeah, I've definitely
And,
wanted to scream at you.
Yeah. And it's one of those
certain
things.
times in this game.
It's not super relaxing. It's
No.
not for those 15
It's
minutes.
not a relaxing 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's very kind of tense, and so
Yeah.
you're just like, and I think there's a lot of people that would not like that tension. I think there's a lot of people that would be like, nope, it just feels too tense for me.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
I don't
It's
wanna
not
do it.
relaxing.
Yeah.
Because I think you see this box and you see the contents of it when it all comes out, and you realize like it's brightly colored, it looks
Yeah.
friendly, it looks inviting.
It looks like a vacation.
And then you've got this tense, like, undertone of, like, not being able to communicate and doing the right thing versus the wrong thing and crashing these planes. And I think some people might not be prepared for that,
Right, right.
Of course, it does kind of turn the missions from green to yellow to red
gets
to
harder.
black. So, like, they
Yeah.
start to get a little more daunting
Yeah.
looking, and there's storms in the images. So it does start to get a little more daunting looking. But I think that some people might not they just really might not enjoy that feeling of tension, especially if you're looking for something that's,
more relaxing.
more relaxing
But for
and more chill.
me, I've got a stressful job, and so like when I have time to play a game in the evening time, I really like a game that can suck me in and can kind of get my mind off of whatever I had to deal with during the day. And so this does a really good job of that. That tension, like, gives me tension in a different direction, and so I can't be tense about 2 things at once.
Yeah.
And so it's better to be tense about that, then I can go to bed relaxed.
Right, yeah. And guys, this made both of our overall top 10 lists, which are also on the channel. So the fact that this one's going to score high from probably both of us is not going to be much of a surprise.
Nope.
But so for me, I'm going to give this one a 9. And the reason why I'm going to give this one a 9 is because I feel like in order for it to hit that perfect 10 mark, it has to be something that I can put out and play and that I will enjoy for years and years and years to come. And this one, there is, in the base box here, you have, I forget exactly how many missions. I think it was like 20, it's 11 airports and 21 exciting scenarios.
Okay.
So you've got those 21 missions, and I feel like when I'm done with those 21 missions, I'm not going to go back.
Okay.
Now, there is a QR code in here, and there's some online stuff with some more missions and even some print and play components that they've put out that you can print out and you can kind of have more. But even once you roll through those, this is not something that, for me personally, that I'm going to be like, okay, well, let's go back and start from square one and completely do it over. For me, it's kind of an experience. Once I'm done, I've successfully completed it, and I don't see myself going back to it next year or 5 years from now if it's something that I want to pick up.
Forever.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I wouldn't give it that perfect score. I love everything else about it. And also, just let me say that doesn't mean there's no value here for the amount of plays that you're going to get out of this game for its price point. Like the value is 100% there,
100%
no matter what. But just, it's not infinite. It's not, something that you can put out and play over and over and over. For us, right.
And I gave it a 9 too, and basically kind of the same reasoning. And then the randomness too makes it's a little occasionally frustrating, and so it kind of kept me away from it again too. But I agree with you. I think the value is definitely there, and just because this is not infinitely playable for us, I could definitely see somebody going back, switching. So I always play as the pilot, you always play as the co-pilot, because that's just the orientation of our chairs at the table. But I can totally see people playing the whole game and then switching their seats and playing all the way through it. Again, I can see people even inventing scenarios to keep playing it. I think there's a lot of ways that you could make it infinitely playable, but I think for us, it's probably just not going to happen.
Yeah, and so that's the only thing that's holding me back from it. But yeah, I mean, anything else that you want to say about it?
No, I mean, I think it's a great game.
Yeah.
I would not hesitate to buy it. I may buy this for some Christmas gifts this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. It's perfect for that
It is.
too.
It's perfect for
Yep.
that. Yep.
So, guys, it's a 9 from both of us.
Yep.
We love Sky Team. From what I can tell, it's sold out in most places. So, do your best to get your hands on this
Yep.
as soon as you possibly can. Keep an eye out for it used as people play through this one. It's probably going to be something that
Yep.
they try to sell or trade off just for the fact that it is those limited missions.
Yep.
So, keep your eyes open. You should be able to find a copy of this somewhere. Guys, thank you for watching another one of our videos. Please like, subscribe below. It helps us out. Thank you guys very much for watching.
Yep. See you next time.
Bye.